Now I'm going to have a panel talk, and I'm going to have on the stage three very inspirational women, Shoshana, Harriet and Evie, who are going to be talking about some of the work they're doing in the Middle East and showcasing their companies as well. So just welcome them all up onto the stage. Now work that hand cream, work the hand cream.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Wonderful. So I think we are three people who are going to introduce ourselves and have a conversation about the overlap in our work. So why don't I start? My name's Shoshana Stewart, and I'm the president of Turquoise Mountain, which is an organization that supports artisans, where their traditions, and often they are under threat, in Afghanistan and Myanmar, in Saudi Arabia, in the Levant, so working with Syrians, Jordanians, and Palestinians from Jordan and Palestine. I can talk a little bit more about my project, but I wonder if should we do short intros and then maybe go into,
yes,
or longer intros, and then I can come back to mine.
Do you want to introduce us briefly? So my name's Evie, and I'm here with my colleague Harriet from the Al-Sama Project, and Harriet and I graduated from Oxford last year and moved out to Lebanon to work with Al-Sama, where we were working on strategy and development projects in schools in Bourges and Shatila refugee camps in Beirut. And Harriet can do a quick explanation.
So Al-Sama is a startup-minded, high-growth education NGO based in Lebanon, as Evie said. And just for some context, Al-Sama means the sky in Arabic, and the entire ethos behind the education NGO is about opening new horizons for refugee teenagers and women, and using education and sports to empower them in their journeys. So, yeah, should we?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we share is working with young people. What I might do is give a little bit, maybe 5 minutes, on what it looks like to support artisans in the places in which we work, and then maybe I wonder if you all do a little bit more detail. I mean, I was so inspired. I actually come from a teaching background myself. I was a teacher in Honduras and in New York City and Boston, usually the 13-year-old age group, but very much getting kids up to grade level when they were coming from many grade levels behind. And I noticed the incredible work that you all do on how you deal with incredible rifts in gaps in education between different people in society, but also experiences that mean you just lose years of education. So I think it would be amazing to hear more about what you all do. So let me give a little quick one on me, and also so you can meet Siba, and then I can pull her off the screen. So what Turquoise Mountain does, as I said, is we support artisans and try to protect traditions and make sure we basically do anything we need to make sure that artisans can thrive and can pass it on to the next generation. So what that looks like, for example, in Afghanistan, is we work with about 4,000 weavers across the country, and jewelers, calligraphers, miniature painters, woodworkers, ceramicists. But for a jeweler, let me take a weaver in the center of Afghanistan, that looks like, under the Taliban right now, women are not really a viable part of society in any way. But women can work in the private sector in many cases. So actually you have hundreds of thousands of trained weavers across the country. And for the 4,000 weavers we work with, they are the only breadwinners in their entire families. I mean, extended families. So you have a single woman who is taking care not only of her family, but of her cousins' families, her sisters' families, and much more widely. But she is making the most extraordinarily beautiful carpets that are selling here and in Dubai and in New York. And so you have that woman being the carrier of a set of traditions that was inherited from her mother and her grandmother, showing an incredibly beautiful side and heritage of Afghanistan, and providing the only income in that community. So it can be incredibly powerful traditional craft in the places in which I work. But let Siba, who is our director of sales and marketing in the Levant, in other words, she's responsible for getting products to market for the artisans we work with, Syrian, Jordanian, and Palestinian. But what Siba does essentially is well, if I give one more example, so there is this fancy hotel in the middle of Mayfair, the Connaught Hotel, and we just opened a suite there. We actually did one for them about 12 years ago, made entirely in Afghanistan. And we just opened a new one which supports, oh, thank you. Oh, you're wonderful. 100 artisans, Syrian, Afghan, and Myanmar. So it is this extraordinary piece of Mughal architecture, beautiful carved woodwork, woven carpets in a five-star hotel in the center of Mayfair. And that's what Siba does, is she, oh yeah, thank you. I'll hand over to these ladies while I sort out the tech.
And yeah, I think what's interesting, just before we talk about education and the schools that we work in, is Al-Sama actually started with a studio, so with an artisan textile studio. It started as a women's empowerment center through local craft and financially empowering women through traditional Lebanese and Syrian craft before then. And then once we spent about 6 months working in the studio with these women, and then after that they increasingly kept coming to us saying, okay, now we know how to run our own small businesses, now we want to learn how to kind of speak English and how to trade in markets, and we want to educate our children. So that's kind of where the concept of the school first began, was from demand from these women who wanted to take it to the next level. But I can give a little bit of context.
Forget about that. Go for it.
No, thank you, Shoshana. A bit of context on the refugee situation in Lebanon, which is where we work, which, as I'm sure a lot of you know, Lebanon has the highest proportion of refugees per capita. 1 in 5 people in Lebanon are refugees. And within that, there are 1.5 million Syrian refugees, and half of which are children. And we work specifically at Al-Sama within the kind of the children and teenager space, and specifically focusing on empowering them through education. So 60% of Syrian children in Lebanon have had no formal education or schooling whatsoever, which means that less than 3% graduate from secondary school. So unfortunately, in the communities we work with then, around 50% of girls are married before 18, and about 45% of boys are in full-time labor under the age of 12. So that's the kind of the context that we're working in.
And so it's from this context that Al-Sama was born. As Evie said, it started out as a female empowerment centre and then responded to the needs of the community when our founders were teaching female empowerment. The community asked for more, and our founders gave them more. And it's just grown intensely since then. We have, within 4 years, we have 4 schools over the 2 refugee camps that we currently operate in. We have over 880 students and 15 sports cricket hubs. Our main focus at Al-Sama is cricket, and the cricket is led by students. We have student coaches, and we have a 50-50% gender split on who is playing cricket, which was massively a new thing within the refugee camps that we were in, that we started out in, and came to some people's outrage at first, but now it's kind of the norm that both the boys and the girls are playing cricket, and this teaches them leadership skills, gets them out of the weekends into something productive. And the reason why Al-Sama, I think one of the reasons why Al-Sama is so special is because it's completely embedded and within the communities of these refugee camps, and community-led. Our bases, our headquarters, all of the schools are in the heart of the communities. And I think it's 96% of our paid staff are local. They're guided by, we've got ex-McKinsey and ex-Skadden founders and leaders who are guiding the kind of startup innovation side of where our NGO is growing, but it really, the fact that we are so locally led speaks to our ethos, which is we're not delivering a program, a one-off program, we're like building institutions. We're completely with longevity in mind and completely to be run and kind of self-sustaining by the people in the community. So that's a really big part of our ethos. We've got our top students employed by the schools, helping lead our social media, for example, be welcomers. And I think that's what makes Alsama so special, is the fact that we're kind of building from the ground up and really embedding this education and sports empowerment within the community and growing so quickly because of it. And yes, I think that really relates to Turquoise Mountain's work in terms of really embedding itself within the communities as well.
So, question for you all, and I wonder if you have thoughts as well. I mean, it's very, hearing about financial inclusion this morning and so many important sort of skills and sets of knowledge that people need in the world. If we step away from that for a second to some of the softer stuff, I'm very interested in why sport and what does it look like, right? What does it look like for young people? Like, why does it matter? And what does it look like what is the what about it? About some of the intangible thing, intangible is not the right word, but they're not quantifiable and they're not skill sets exactly. Why does it matter? Why do you do sports? I mean, I know why I do heritage and craft, so I've obviously got an answer to it too, but I'm interested in how this applies to various bits of work that you all do as well. So, I mean, maybe you all first. Why sport and what happens?
Happy to jump in there, and then Harry, you can add. I think, I think there are two major things why sport is so important for our teenagers in Lebanon. I think it reminds me actually of Tia, what you were saying about sport for resilience. So there's that emotional, intangible side, which I can go on to talk about. But then there's also the more pragmatic, and it's a way of how we actually build trust and respect in local communities. So before every school starts actually as a cricket hub. So we now have 4 schools across Lebanon, but we have 15 cricket hubs. And even though our 4 schools are in Beirut, we have cricket hubs in the Bekaa Valley, on the border with Israel, on the border with Syria. And it's a way that we build trust and respect with the local communities before we then come in building a school or bringing teachers in. It's a way of interacting with local communities, speaking to parents, bringing boys and girls together in a way that builds the base for society before we then start kind of bringing in education programs. And then to speak, I guess, to the more, the intangible, the emotional empowerment that I think comes from sport, and especially for girls. It's incredible when you watch how obsessed all our, kind of, especially female cricketers are, and the way that sport encourages you to be leaders and to set role models and to become an example for your peers. We have, our most senior cricket coach is a 17-year-old girl, and she's had never played any sport before when she joined our summer, age 12, and now she's a representative for the MCC Cricket Foundation, and they go on tour around Lebanon through the different cricket hubs, playing that sense of competition, as you were talking about as well, the importance of competition between the schools. So I think there's a lot of emotional and kind of physical benefits.
Yeah, no, definitely. And just to add to that point about the kind of gender divide that we see, as if we get the kids and the students into a sports setting from these early ages and have their aptitudes and enthusiasm for sports, which often is socialized differently in other countries for what should be, for whether it's more related, more for boys or girls. If you get them into these settings at a young age, it really counteracts any notions of kind of biological difference in terms of their aptitude for things. And from a more pragmatic point of view, we run the schools 44 some plus weeks out of the year because we want to consistently be providing this safe environment for our students to come to. And the sports hubs exist basically all year round throughout the holidays. Like, part of the reason why we've got this intense schooling is because the students within this 1 kilometre square camp in the middle of Beirut, where 40,000 people are living, they have nowhere to go. during the day. We have students coming to the schools an hour early for class because that's where they want to be that day. And I think from that kind of pragmatic point of view, sports was completely, provides something, that thing to do, that positive thing to do at the weekends, and then school during the weekdays. Yeah.
Shoshana, for you, for your artisans and for your women, why, what do you, what for you or what for them do they see the benefits or the relationship with craft?
I feel like I've sort of found an answer to this question over the last few years that I didn't understand before. I didn't come from a craft background. I was like a physics major and then a physics teacher. But I've been now doing this for about 18 years, and the last 4 years have been objectively terrible in the world in so many ways. COVID disproportionately affected people who've left their homes, people who have no savings. It was a disaster. Then in Myanmar, the Burmese military took over in a coup and is running an incredibly brutal regime there. The Taliban took over in Afghanistan, and now the war between Israel and Gaza and Palestine. And so you figure out real quick whether what you do matters at all. Because if it doesn't, nobody's gonna come. Everyone's gonna leave, nobody's gonna fund you, it's just gonna stop. Because when everything goes wrong, when security disappears, when your sense of the future disappears, when public services stop working, you have to be able to feed your family. That is primary, and I have watched that across all of those three places. So the financial bit of what we do has to work, right? We have to be able to sell the products that we do. So we will sell probably $4 million worth of products through us. I mean, we're a charity, but we buy and sell things to get products to market, and then support another $10 million in sales directly to customers. So that bit has to work. But then, to the conversation, there are other ways to create incomes anywhere. You can just hand out cash, right? Which can be amazing, too. What we found is that there is something special about making. It is the therapy of using your hands, so I think that's part of it, and I think that happens in sport as well, the physicality. There's a connection to your inheritance, right? You know that this is rooted in what you were handed down in your family, the motifs you see around you in your houses. And there's something about just bringing a little bit of beauty into the world. So that's what I have watched happen. I didn't expect it to happen, but that is what's happened. And like if I just give two examples. So in Afghanistan, the week the Taliban took over, we had a set of carpets that were going to an exhibition in Saudi Arabia of mosque decoration and furniture at the Ithra Center in Dammam. And they were being joined by an amazing mosaic minbar made in Jordan, and some plasterwork made in Saudi. So all of our artisans are converging, all needs to land in Riyadh and then get on a truck. So then the Taliban takes over. We've got our prayer carpets sitting like at the Kabul airport. So everyone is terrified for their lives. Things have turned out in many ways differently than we expected, but at that moment, everyone believed that anyone who'd worked with foreigners was going to be targeted. So everyone felt that fear. Everyone was paralyzed. Finances from the international community stopped on a dime. But the people who were involved in that kept trying to make it work. And they somehow got the carpets to Riyadh on like a transport ship. I still don't even understand how they did it. But there was something about when you're paralyzed, you have to do something. And they did. So I watched that. And then it has also been true in the horrific last 6 months. In the early days of October, so we work in the West Bank at home in Bethlehem, and after those horrific attacks in early October, the West Bank was just shut, basically. Every checkpoint was closed and nobody could move between. So families were terrified about bad and lethal interactions at checkpoints, so nobody would leave their houses. Every 3 days, someone would go out to a store to get supplies, right? So we're sort of on the phone with all of our artisans, like, you don't need to send your orders. Like, don't worry about it. Just take care of your family. And Mohammed Tawam, who's a glassblower in Hebron, is like, no, we're sending it. We're going to get it there. We're like, no, you don't need to. It's fine. They're like, no, we're going to keep working. Send orders. And that's what I've gotten across the West Bank for the last 6 months is send orders. Like, we're going to keep working. But it kind of made sense to me because I know that his entire family is sitting at home, can't move, petrified. But he can work and he can earn and he can blow glass, which is this total alchemy and beautiful thing. So I realized that was a slightly long explanation, but it's complicated, right? Why in the middle of war, because that's basically where I work, do we do craft? Well, I don't know, that's why. These intangibles are what sort of lift us into being able to get through our day, I think. That's sort of how I've experienced it. But I don't know, I'm interested in whether anyone else, and I expect we're pretty much out of time, right? So I wondered if anyone else had an example of the sort of intangibles of life coming into play. Yeah. I'll give you mine.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I run Ambassador Play, a social enterprise that works with refugee children, so familiar with the space context. Don't want to drag it into academia, but I did my master's in child development at Oxford, looking at self-efficacy, so that was my thesis, and we look at STEM. So whether it's sports or STEM or craft, it's your perception of your ability to pursue something, and you guys have spoken so much about mastery experience and vicarious experience through like your heritage, for example, of artisans and so on. So yeah, it's regardless of whether the 17-year-old coach becomes a famous cricketer, it's more that they know that they can if they want to. So everything is back to efficacy and agency and what you can control. Yeah.
No, listen, don't let me...
Yeah, I have a question, if that's okay. Oh my God, what's with my voice? So thank you very much. It was such an inspiring panel. And Shoshana, I admire your work, and I'm from Afghanistan. Yeah. Tashakkur. And I know, and I'm very familiar with your work, and I know Mariam from your team. So and I just know your work. I'm very much familiar. So when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, so I have an NGO in Afghanistan where we are supporting Afghan girls with capacity building programs, awareness raising initiatives, and storytelling. So when the Taliban took over, I had to stop the operations in Afghanistan because half of my team became refugees. They were scattered across the globe, and obviously my family, friends. It was very chaotic. And then I changed the strategy of my nonprofit to online education. So right now we're trying to do something not like at the school level, but more like providing like public speaking courses, some other things to just give them hope. And they just come to the online, they just feel that, oh, we have a community now, we can just do something from our home. So that gives them hope. And also I started doing a lot of advocacy here in the UK at the House of Commons, UN, and other places to really raise awareness and share the stories. So storytelling is a big part of what I share, the stories of. And I usually, in my storytelling actually, when I share the stories of Afghan women and girls, and that's exactly what I share the positive stories. And I think, Shoshana, your work is incredible because there's so many positive things there, right? Like in these very challenging situations. Right now, Afghanistan is facing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world, and you are working on that in terms of like economically empowering them, which is very important. And I wanted to like thank you really from the bottom of my heart, because I think Afghan women and girls we in Afghanistan need more projects like that, which are more income generating and really focusing on their economic empowerment because of as you said, like they're like breadwinners of their families, a lot of women, and it's very helpful. So my question to you was, I'm very familiar with the concept of Afghanistan. I work, like it's my work, it's my passion, but I wondering like what are the challenges that you are facing, or that you have faced post-Taliban takeover? Like, did you adapt the strategy, or I don't know, like how do you keep safe your artisans, the women are?
Yeah, well, I'm very happy to meet you. Amazing that you've been able to adapt also. It's not easy, and most people have left, as you know. So the answer is we, in our institute where we train basically in higher education, vocational education, both men and women in craft, we split into a women's side and men's side. All the female teachers, female students, all the women's owned businesses are on one side. It's not a secret school. The Taliban know all about it. We have like 7 line ministries that come and visit us all the time. But they want that we can work. obviously it's an exception. This is not the rule that women can be in education, but I expect like you can find ways to do it. And actually quite a lot of local administration and even higher echelons of the Taliban government actually want to let women, I don't know that they want to let women back into education. They feel the pressure to let women back into education, but the supreme leader, the emir in Kandahar, is not having it. So there's a battle, but you can get permissions locally. So that's one of the things we did. But the other thing really is the private sector. It's so interesting because I mean, we're an NGO. The Taliban knows we're an NGO. We're a British NGO. But what we look like and what we look like to the public that they are trying to stay in charge of is I have 250 Afghan staff, and we look like little Afghan businesses. It looks like private sector. It's people being employed and generating an income. That, as you say, like real economic activity in the midst of a pretty dire humanitarian situation. So that's how we've adapted. But we haven't had to stop anything. We've had to adjust a lot of things. But the challenge is, but the war is over, as you know, there's not fighting anymore. They stopped. But how the heck you run a society where half the population is not really able to be a part of it, and it's totally untenable. It's totally untenable. So that's the heartbreaking thing for every Afghan family and for anyone who works there. So that's the challenge. It's an impossibility. But bless you for what you're doing too. We should talk.
Definitely, I would love that.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Listen, thank you. I'm not going to hurry you because I have one question. Why? What is your why? I mean, you've got some incredible challenges. You're in a place where war is taking place. You've got this society that you can live in quite easily. What is it that motivates you to get up and do this time after time after time? Because you're all incredible women. And, you know, I sincerely salute you, but I want to know why.
I guess, I think for me, the why only really became clear when I moved out to Lebanon and lived and worked with these incredible children, teenagers, and women. And I think it's building on what everyone here today has said about when you are empowered and you believe that you have a skill, you have a craft, you have an ability, whether, as we said, whether that's STEM, whether that's sport, whether it's artisanship, it's hope, and it's so inspiring. And I think the energy and how much I've learned from all these incredible girls, women, boys, that is enough to fuel lifetimes worth of future. And I think it's a really powerful fuel of hope and inspiration. And we do a lot of we do TED Talk clubs and public speaking workshops. And when you encourage people to believe that their dreams can come true and articulate their passions, it's really empowering. And that, I think, once you've experienced that, there's nothing else quite like it.
I'd say similarly to Evie, that it was that inspiration, and a particular moment of that was halfway through our internships. The war broke out in Israel-Palestine, and it was the most heartwarming and humanity-affirming thing to watch Al-Sama's response. You had a room of people of probably 6-7 different nationalities. You've got Lebanese people, Palestinians, Syrians, Germans, Brits, all different faiths as well, coming together, and we formulated our emergency response policy through that, and it was the most beautiful talk, and it was driven by respect and commitment to this amazing thing that we're doing, and we will continue to do. And Al-Sama's entire motto is get stuff done. And while it felt like the rest of the world, similarly to Turquoise Mountain and how it just pursues and progresses within conflict, when it felt like the rest of the world was coming to halts and other NGOs were halting operations due to uncertainty, we kind of were powering through, and it was after and around that time where Evie and I were working on, we've got an education innovation which would be providing an exam, a GED-style standardized universal exam to refugee teenagers to help them access higher education and employment, giving broad foundations, showing that they can apply their skills in real-life contexts. And it was literally around that point where we made our biggest progress with our education innovation. We sent it out, and we're now partnering with Cambridge and doing amazing things there. And it was just within the context where it felt like everyone else was slowing down, we powered through and spread up because we were able to sit round a table, formulate our emergency response policy, get ourselves in order, and just continue smashing the work and smashing all of those ceilings and stuff. And that's what it inspires you, and it makes you want to just continue doing this forever and ever because you see people mobilizing in such an incredible way. But yeah.
Brilliant, love it.
Brings such a smile to my face. I mean, whatever the theory of what you all do, it obviously works because that is the evidence of it, right? Because and very shortly, I suppose, the world is an increasingly violent and difficult place, without question. This has been a very bad period, and it doesn't look like it's getting better, right? Yeah. And everyone's personal reaction to that is very different. I think part of the way we're wired and part of the way we deal with it and everything else, right? But for me, when I was in Jordan and Palestine for half of March, and everything around is just terrible. But actually, the daily work, when I just go around with my staff and we look at jewelry designs and we figure out what we're going to bring to that hotel, that is positive. That's the thing, is you can do something. That's the thing, is the world is really rough, but you can do something. So I love spending my energy. I love my job. I like spending my energy on what you can do. It's a much better place to be.
Listen, thank you so much. Learned so much from you this morning. So, come on, we can do better than that. We can do better than that. Great. Now, listen, it's now time for lunch. We've got lunch out the front. If you can be back here for 10 to 2, so you can get settled. One thing I would ask you to do over lunch, talk to someone you haven't met before. Don't talk to the person you came here with. It's easy. Hi, my name is. What do you do? What can I learn from you today? It's very, very easy. So please just do that and create this bigger family and community. I love you all already. I'll love you even more at the end of the day. But if you just do that one thing for me, that would be great. Thank you all. Thanks again, ladies. Thank you.